Hi everyone, it's Leela from Miss Kiss Creations. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to show you how I created this beautiful yet simple marble effect tumbler. I will be posting all of my materials that I used in this video, including the colors of everything and some links to some of the materials in my description below. So please be sure to check that out. And let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, so first things first, while working with epoxy and paints, make sure you are taking the proper precautions. I do have my face mask on, that's why I sound funny. And always wear gloves. I'm wearing an apron to protect my clothing, just in case I make a mess and get something in my lap. Today I am working with a 15-ounce stainless steel tumbler that I purchased from Wal-Mart. I went ahead, I sanded this tumbler with 180 grit sandpaper or a sanding block. Then I wiped this tumbler down with 91% alcohol. Then I went ahead and I spray painted this tumbler purple. The purple that I used today is the French Lilac from Rust-Oleum. The finish is Satin. I let my tumbler dry for about 20 to 25 minutes. As my tumbler was drying, I went ahead and I mixed up my epoxy. I mixed a total of 40 milliliters of epoxy. So 20 milliliters of part A and 20 milliliters of part B, totaling 40 milliliters of epoxy. To create this easy marble effect, I used acrylic paint and glitter. So what I did was I took my 1 ounce measuring cups and I put a little bit of acrylic paint separately in each cup. So if you see, I'm just using just a little bit of acrylic paint. I also did that with my glitter. So I am using 2 colors of glitter. I put this amount of glitter in my 1 ounce measuring cups. I'm now going to add epoxy to each cup. I filled my measuring cups about 1/8 to 1/2 fluid ounce. So some of my cups are 1/8 of a fluid ounce and others are 1/2 fluid ounce. This is all up to you. I just fill them up just to use a little bit. I don't want to fill them all the way up because I'm not going to use that much epoxy. Now that all of my epoxy is in the measuring cups, I'm now going to stir each cup individually. You want to make sure you stir all of the acrylic paint with the epoxy. Make sure you stir it very well. Make sure it is not separated at all. So right now the epoxy and the acrylic paint is still separated. You want to mix that where there's one color. You don't want strands. You don't want to see colors inside the epoxy and the mix. You want it to be one color. So it looks like I added a little bit too much epoxy to this one, or a little bit too much paint to this one, so I just added a little bit of epoxy. You can use any color scheme. I just chose to do purple. I added some black and some white, and then I added some purple glitter and some white glitter. Now it's time to epoxy the tumbler. I'm going to first put a clear coat of epoxy on the tumbler. It's not going to be too thick. It's not going to be too thin. I will add the amount of how much I'm used in the video. So there should be a milliliter amount popping up on your screen. Again, this is for a 15-ounce tumbler. I just want a little bit just to give me more leeway whenever I go to add the other epoxy onto the tumbler. This tumbler is so easy and you cannot mess this up. Don't overthink it. Just go with the flow. Let the turner do its own thing. I now have my epoxy on my turner and I'm going to start with my first purple color It's the darkest color. I just grabbed whatever I grabbed first. There's no specific way on how to put the colors or what order to put the colors on the tumbler. I do have baby wipes on hand because I don't want to change my gloves. We are very short on gloves right now. So get some baby wipes or some wet paper towels to clean off your glove because you will be applying this epoxy with your finger. So you're just going to dip your finger in the tumbler or inside of the 1 ounce cup. And then you're going to just spread the ink, or excuse me, spread the acrylic paint on the tumbler. So actually it's easier for me if I spin the tumbler towards my way for this effect. And it's whichever way you find it easier, that's the way you do it. All I'm doing is taking my finger and just dragging wherever it lands on the tumbler. I'm dragging it at a diagonal flow. So I'm kind of spinning with the tumbler. I'm not going up and down. I'm trying to diagonally place the epoxy. You just want this to be random. You put it wherever you feel necessary or until your heart is happy. And we're going to be doing this with all the colors, and we will be going back and forth with it. So let me try to spin it y'all's way, and maybe I can get it on camera more. All I'm doing is taking my finger. I'm basically just finger painting. That's all I'm doing. Just randomly, there's no rhyme or reason on how I'm doing this. And then whenever I'm done with whichever color I'm doing, I'm now going to switch it up to my next color. The one I grab next is my lighter purple. I'm just going to stir it up with the epoxy, dip my finger in there, and just repeat the process. And I'm just taking my finger and just dragging it up the tumbler, randomly around the tumbler. This is a really fun tumbler for kids, because I know kids, they like to finger paint, excuse me. So this is really fun for kids. It's really, really easy, and it comes out beautiful at the end here. Again, I wiped off my finger. I'm now going in with black. Do keep in mind, the darker colors goes a longer way. So I'm just going to put a little bit of black on the tumbler for now, and then if I want to go back in and put more on there, then I will. And I'm just dabbing on the bottom. I'm not putting in a real design on the bottom. I'm just taking my finger and just putting it wherever I feel necessary. I'm not really thinking too much about this tumbler. That's one of my favorite things about it. Just randomly putting it on, and I'm just dragging my finger, just making a little bit of pressure. Okay, now that I'm done with my black, I'm now going to go in with my white. I like to mix the black and the white. It makes a nice swirl effect. I like mixing the white with the darker colors. But you do this however you want to do this. There's no certain way on how to make this tumbler. Make it your own. Put your own spin on it. You can make the base any color. I just had purple spray paint on hand, so I just made the base purple, and as a lot of y'all know, purple's kind of my favorite color. So anytime I just make a random creation, I usually go for the purple over any other color. So now that I've randomly placed this paint on the tumbler, I'm just going to go back in and just add some other random spots. And you're going to see the paints kind of move because of the epoxy. That's what you want to happen. You don't want these straight lines on these tumbler. We're going to hit this with a heat gun, and it's going to make a little bit of swirl. You don't want too much heat on here, but you want a little bit just to make a little bit of swirl and kind of the easy marble effect. So I'm just going to add a little bit here and there just to fill in. And then once I'm done with the paint, I'm now going to grab my glitter and then add glitter wherever I feel necessary. So I'm going to go in with my purple glitter first. Dip my finger in there and just add it wherever my finger lands on the tumbler. I like to add it over the paint because it smears the paint more. And I like the effect that it gives it at the end of the tumbler whenever it's done and whenever it's settled. You want to work fast with this because this acrylic paint and epoxy does dry quickly, especially if you accidentally overmix your acrylic paint. So do keep that in mind. So I added the purple, and now I am wanting to add the chunky white. I really like adding this chunky white to these tumblers. It gives it a nice pop, and it creates layers on these tumblers. It's just enough. It kind of adds some elegance to the cup. So if you see, I didn't use nearly as much as of epoxy that I showed y'all in the beginning. I have all this epoxy left over, so I'm actually going to make another tumbler with this, just so I don't waste it. I will get the total of how much epoxy I actually use, and I will be adding it to the screen, just to help y'all out. I'm not used to doing more than one. I'm not used to doing one tumbler at a time. I usually do multiple tumblers at a time, so I'm really bad with measuring how much epoxy to use at times. So if you want to go back and forth with this tumbler and add more glitter, add more pink, add more purple, you do you, and you make this tumbler the way you like it. You can't mess it up. You really can't. I have added my paints and my glitters to my tumbler. Now you're going to apply heat to the tumbler. Be very careful on how much heat that you add to this tumbler. Personally, I like the lines going diagonal, and I don't want much of a swirl on this tumbler. So the more heat that I add, it's going to thin out the epoxy, and it's going to make that swirl effect. I want to avoid that as much as I can, but I do want some kind of swirl in the tumbler. I know, I'm complicated. So add just a little bit of heat. And remember, you can always add more heat. Your tumbler will change the most during its first hour of spinning. The epoxy isn't cured, it's not drying, it's still wet, and it still has that kind of flow consistency to it. So I'm going to take my heat gun. It is a Wagner brand. I did purchase this from Lowe's. They can also be purchased from Amazon. I am going to hit this with a heat gun for probably 10 to 15 seconds, and that's it. If I'm not satisfied with that after 30 to 45 minutes of my tumbler turning, I will hit it again with a heat gun, but I highly doubt I will. So that was actually about 10 seconds of heat. That is just enough to make these swirls happen around this tumbler, but still keep the straight or the diagonal lines on the tumbler. I personally like the diagonal lines. If you don't like them, add more heat, and then you'll have that beautiful swirl effect, and it will look just as gorgeous as this tumbler. Once you're finished designing your tumbler, go ahead and keep it on the turner for 4 to 6 hours. Once it has spun on your turner for 4 to 6 hours, go ahead and turn off your turner. Let your tumbler air dry or air cure for another 4 to 6 hours. giving your tumbler a drying or curing time of 10 to 12 hours. After your tumbler has been spinning or has been drying for 12 hours, go ahead and add your decal and then go right into epoxying over, repeating the drying process again.
I hope you enjoyed this quick and simple video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more tumbler and craft videos. Thank you for watching and I'll see y'all next time.